we're here today with Althea Gibson as she's being inducted into the Tennis Hall of Fame. We're just gonna go over her amazing story with y'all today. So, Althea, starting from the beginning, I know you were born in the town of Silver, South Carolina, given your name by Daniel Gibson and Annabelle Gibson on August 25th, 1927. Correct?
Yes.
But then you'll have to move to Harlem, New York, and it was my understanding because when the Great Depression hit, it was a lot tougher for the farmers in the South than the rest of the country.
Yes, and both my parents worked as sharecroppers on a cotton farm, and because it was very sparse, it forced them to move to Harlem, and they could get work on cotton farms there.
Oh, so, and there's where your three little sisters and your baby brother were born, but what was it like living in Harlem, a place that's known to be a lot rougher?
It's definitely a more rough neighborhood than South Carolina, but on the upside, the house we moved into, the street in front of our house, was a designated place for children in the area to get to play organized sports. So that was a good, safe place for me and my siblings to get to play, and that's where I got introduced to the world of sports.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, and so at this time, once you were around age 12, you really started to thrive in paddle tennis and became the paddle tennis champion in 1939. What was that like for you to see so much success?
You make it sound like I was doing great, but during that time when I was younger, I was quite the troublemaker. I would often skip school, and it would make my father really upset because he's very strict. But I'm actually why I was living in this age in Harlem. I picked up boxing because my dad thought it would be good for me to know, living in a place like Harlem. It was especially hard growing up in Harlem as a young black woman, though, and I ended up dropping out of school in 8th grade.
Oh, interesting. So, your father has been claimed to be quite abusive towards you and your family for dropping out and being a troublemaker. What can you say about that?
I never viewed him as abusive. It was more him trying to show me discipline, but nonetheless, I did end up moving out, and I lived in a church that was a protective shelter.
Oh, okay. And we'll be right back after commercial.
Corey Coco Gauff. Is she ready for the world stage?
You can call me young.
She's only 15.
Call me the new kid.
Is she all hype?
Call me
Does
ambitious.
she deserve a shot at the Open?
Call me what you want.
A fluke or not, only time will tell.
But win or lose, call me Coco.
So we're back, picking up where we left off. So when you lived in the shelter, you also worked a few different jobs, but you were just out of 8th grade at the time. But it never seemed to affect your love for sports. And even though you grew up very far removed from the two worlds of tennis at the time, because it was very segregated, then there was the white tennis courts that were played mainly on country clubs, and then the black tennis courts that were made and put on by black doctors and lawyers. But then you were discovered by the Cosmopolitan Tennis Club, and they would kind of take you to those courts to train, right?
The Cosmopolitan Tennis Club actually really tried to take the time to teach me how to act in social situations and to be good with manners and sportsmanship with other people.
Oh, okay, cool. So where would you play in this time of segregation of leagues and such?
During this time, there was a league at the American Tennis Association known as the ATA, and this is where I started my career because of the league, put on black members of the community.
Oh, cool. So, and then after you started tennis with the Cosmopolitan Tennis Club, you were then coached by Herbert Eaton and Fred Johnson. How did y'all become a team?
Actually, when I made it to my first American Tennis Association final, I actually lost. But at the tournament is where my potential caught the eye of Herbert and Fred. And after meeting them, they began coaching me on some of the black courts that were not too far away from where I lived in Harlem.
Oh, okay, interesting. And you know what's amazing about y'all's duos? Not only did y'all changed your life, but y'all changed completely the world of tennis. And something that I found really interesting was that you were mainly coached by Fred Johnson, and he only had one arm, but he was a professional tennis player himself, but he's more known for discovering you. And once you began being coached by these bright minds, you won your first tennis association tournament, and went on to win the ATA National Junior Championship in 1944 and 1945. And then this is when a lot of politically active members of the Black community realized that you could be someone who could really break down the color barrier. What was that like for you?
During this time, it was definitely a total whirlwind for me. It was when everything started looking up. I enrolled back in high school, and something I'm really proud of is I didn't just enroll back in high school, but I ended up graduating in 3 years and finishing number 10 in my class.
Wow. And yeah, so then in 1949, you graduated, after 3 years, and then went on a tender scholarship to Florida A&M. But not only were you a major in physical education and heavily involved in the tennis team, but you pledged Alpha chapter of the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority.
Yes, I love my time there at Florida A&M.
Wow. And then during these times is when you really started to break down the color barrier of tennis. And in 1950, you finally got an invitation to Forest Hills, where the U.S. Open is played. And it was a big deal to get that invitation because no one really wanted you to get to compete against the white players at the time. So what was it like to be the first African American to get to play in that league?
That time, that was known as the White League, though. I lost in the second round of the tournament. My invitation to that tournament, though, allowed me to qualify for more tournaments in the White League.
Oh, awesome. And we'll talk more about this when we're back.
Stevens, and I bounce back with chocolate milk.
So after Forest Hills, your next major event was the England Tennis Championship in 1951. And then time kind of passed by as you kept playing in tournaments and got your degree. But then after you graduated from Florida A&M is when you really forced people to notice you. And then in 1955, the U.S. State Department actually sent you and 3 other players to play on a goodwill tour to play exhibition matches. And the most impressive part is it was the White League that sent you, which never would have happened if you didn't come in and start breaking the color barrier.
So yes, and actually after that tour is when I started playing my best, because that next year in 1956 was when I made history by winning the singles in the French Open as the first African American to win an extremely major tournament.
And not only did you win that, but still in 1956 you made history by winning the French Open and Wimbledon in the doubles division, where you played with your partner Angela. What was it like playing with her?
I loved my experience with Angela. Her being a white woman showed a lot of support for me and what I was trying to do, and no one wanted to play with me at the time because I'm a Black woman, and no one really wanted to play with Angela because she's Jewish.
Oh yeah, so y'all were kind of called the outcast duo, and Angela, was denied membership to a club in London after she put down that her religion was Jewish, so I'm sure she could kind of relate to what you were going through.
Yeah, no one would even talk to me at the tournament, so definitely no one wanted to play with me at the time, but Angela was looking for a doubles partner at the same time as me, and it all fell into place perfectly.
Wow, and then in 1957, you made history again by winning Wimbledon along with the U.S. Nationals and became the first African American to win Wimbledon, following being the first woman to even play in it. And then when you won the U.S. Nationals, you returned home on July 11th to New York, and you were the second African American after Jesse Owens to have a ticker tape parade hosted for you. What was that like?
The parade was amazing. It was an extremely big event that went through New York City, and I sat on top of a convertible as we drove around, and there were hundreds of people in office buildings and parking garages, and all of them were throwing confetti.
Wow. Amazing. And then that following year, you did it again and defended your crown and won Wimbledon again. And you actually accepted the trophy from Queen Elizabeth II. And when you accepted it, you said, at last, at last. What did that mean for you?
That's when I really felt I had done it and broken the color barrier.
Wow, yeah, because I mean, not only did you win all those tournaments, the first one to win Wimbledon in 1957 and 58, but you also were voted Female Athlete of the Year by the Associated Press for both years, and not only won, but had 80% of the votes to your name. And you were also the first Black woman on the cover of Sports Illustrated. So you really had an amazing career there. How did that feel?
I was definitely living on cloud 9 at the time, but I also felt I was done with tennis for the time, so I did retire in 1958.
Oh, and we'll talk about the retired life when we're back.
Together, we've taken down countless adversaries.
We felt the joy and the pain.
Have we always seen eye to eye? No way.
But the bond, that never goes away.
This is my weapon.
My ally.
My life.
This is my racket.
I'm nothing without it.
And it's nothing without me.
So, talking about after you retired from tennis, your greatness continued, and you wrote your first autobiography that year, and it was published, called I Always Wanted to Be Somebody, which was mainly about your aspirations as a child and your plans for the future. And then, after you published that, you went into the music and acting career and pursued your music career even more and published an album in 1959 called Althea Gibson Sings. And then you were casted as a woman slave in the Horse Soldier movie, which I personally think it's amazing how you went to conquer all these different types of professions. I mean, not only that, but you traveled with the Harlem Globetrotters for a year and played a tennis match before then as kind of the opening event. And then after you traveled with the Harlem Globetrotters, you settled back down in New Jersey, and where you picked up playing golf for the next 3 years, where you trained as a golfer and became a professional golfer. And not only that, the first African American woman on the LGPA tour. What made you to aspire to do music and golf?
I always loved to sing, and I wanted to try acting, and then after I settled down in New Jersey, I needed something else to do, so I just started golfing.
Wow, interesting. Over the past few years, you've been working as the New Jersey State's Commissioner of Athletics, but along with that, you've kind of settled down quite a bit. But I mean, everything we just talked about, no one deserves to be inducted into the National Women's Tennis Hall of Fame more than anyone else. So, congratulations.
Thank you.